It is now my pleasure to be joined by Jarome Bell, who is running for State House of Representatives down in District 12, Seat A. So, without any further introduction, Jerome, thanks for joining me. What brought you both to Idaho and also to the ballot?
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Well, long story. I give you the long story since we might have some time here. I have more than a minute. My son actually brought us to Idaho pretty much. My youngest son is a musical theater performer. I have three sons. I have one that's an HVAC tech and one that's a captain in the Air Force, a medical doctor, emergency room doc. But my youngest son, he was performing at the Starlight Mountain Theater here in 2020. And so me and my wife came out and saw him perform, and then we toured the state. We toured the state, went over to Montana. We saw Old Faithful, took some pictures with some buffaloes, and came back through the Tetons and just saw, all of the beauty, the Shoshone Falls, Mesa Falls, and everything that Idaho had. And I'm a fisherman. I'm a hunter. I'm an outdoors guy and going up to where Garden Valley, where the Starlight Mountain Theater is. You're riding along the Payette River. You can actually pull over and camp, and nobody mess with you. So it was stuff like that, man. It just seemed to be free, and I knew Idaho was a constitutional carry state, and Idaho was still red for the most part, and we'll get back to that later. And so me and my wife decided to buy a house out here, and we were just going to use the house for like a summer vacation getaway or winter if we want to go skiing or bring the boys out, stuff like that. And so I was running again in Virginia in 2022, and I lost my primary. The Uniparty, led by Kevin McCarthy, they spent $7 million to beat me in my congressional run out there. That was my second time, and so I'm a grassroots funded type of candidate. My money and my funding of my candidacy and my races come from retirees. They come from first responders. Things like that. So I had raised about $600,000, but I couldn't compete with the $7 million that they put against me, and the open primaries that we had there in Virginia. I had over 8,000 Democrats come over and vote for my opponent against me because she was the weakest one going up against the Democrat that actually held the seat, and so lost that. And we really had no more ties to Virginia. My sons were all gone; they were grown. And so we said, hey, let's just go out to Idaho because my wife actually loved it out here as well. Not only me, but she loved it as well. One of the few places she's actually liked that we lived in. And so we came out here and retired and moved out here. And when find out that the people out here are wonderful. We've had such a great time of meeting people here. And during my congressional race in 2022, I had a lot of donors from Idaho. Because they understood my America First message. They knew I was a staunch conservative. They knew I was 100% with Donald Trump. And General Mike Flynn, who endorsed me. With a host of others that endorsed me during that run. And so they were my donors. So when I got out here, I started getting calls here literally January, February, March of this year to run, to please run. They found out I was out here and they contacted me in various ways, texts, emails, phone calls, and asked me to run against my opponent that I'm running against now because he's not a conservative. He ran as a conservative, he ran as a Republican, but his voting record has been nothing but that. Well, actually everything but being a conservative, to be honest. And so I totally declined at first because I really didn't want to run again. I was just coming out to enjoy, what Idaho had to offer, and my wife and I was just going to do some traveling. And I started looking into this guy. I started looking at his voting record. I started looking at what's going on deeper in Idaho. And what I saw was what happened in Virginia 10 years ago, and why Virginia is blue is the same thing that's happening right now in Idaho. Idaho is being attacked by the radical left, is being attacked by the rhinos. to turn Idaho blue. And when I saw that and saw his voting record, I said, well, okay, I still have this sense of service. I um, served in the military for 27 years, nearly 3 decades of my life. And so, the Monday before the deadline, I went ahead and filed to run. And so that's why I'm in this race. That's what brought me here to Idaho. And that's why we're sitting here today.
Well, that is quite a story, um, and there's a lot to unpack there. So, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is you look at Virginia. I would call them a purple state at least. They have a Republican governor who got in by the skin of his teeth. The House of Delegates or whatever they call it over there is basically fairly divided.
Now
So,
they're blue. They're blue. The House of Delegates and the Senate are all Democrats now. It's
hmm,
blue,
wow.
and Youngkin, I would consider him a rhino. He's not a Republican. He's a globalist. He's WEF. He's been to Davos. He's pushed ESGs with Carlyle Group. That guy is nothing. Is nothing, and not like a true Republican. He's a rhino.
Well, that actually leads me to the second half of that is that Idaho is considered a red state. More than 80% of our legislature is Republican. But the policies that come out of the Idaho legislature are often not too different from the ones that you see out of Virginia. So, what's going on there? You said you want to stop Idaho from going the way Virginia did 10 years ago. How do we do that?
Well, we have to get these rhinos out of here. A lot of people, believe that, states become blue because of Democrats. State become blue because of policies that are voted on by people in the legislature that pretend to be conservative, that tend to be Republicans, but they vote Democrat. I mean, you look at the Institute for Legislative Analysis that just came out with the grades and these other things. Do your representative is your Republican representative a Democrat, or do they vote for Democrat policies? And when you look at that, a lot of the Republicans, including my opponent, that claim to be Republican and claim to be conservative, they don't vote for all conservative bills, but they vote primarily with Democrats. I think one of the numbers is my opponent votes 68% with the Democrats. He's like 48% or something, like 44%, 45% a Republican as far as his voting. And that's all you really need to look at is with your representatives in office. You look at their voting record. Their voting record would tell you exactly which side of the aisle they stand on. And this is what's happening right now in Idaho, because Virginia was deep red. Virginia was red all across the state until we started getting in um, what they call moderate Republicans, which are nothing but Democrats, and they vote on those type of policies. And this is why they say that Idaho is actually being led by a Democrat legislature because of the rhinos.
One of the things I think that happened in Virginia is you've got the DC metro area, which is spilled over the banks of the Potomac and is, in Alexandria and Fairfax. And, you've got all these government employees who,
Right.
they support government because that's their bread and butter.
Mm.
And, DC has never voted for a Republican in its history. And Virginia has obviously gone to the Democrat side. It's not even considered a toss up anymore in the latest maps. Um, so I think big government, big corporations, and urban centers are not good for conservative values. With Boise growing, with the Boise Metro growing, you're obviously over there in Nampa, which is part of that whole Treasure Valley metro area.
Mhm.
How do we contain that growth in such a way, or mitigate it in such a way so that it doesn't inevitably lead to you know leftism?
Mm. Well, I think one of the things we need to do is when these big companies and developers want to come into Nampa, because Kane County, Brian, is the fastest growing county in the state of Idaho. We need to make them pay for it. We need to make them pay for being here. We need to, with impact fees. That's one of the things that I talk to the constituents about here in Nampa, because they're totally concerned about the growth. I was at an open house the other day because they was talking about a housing development here in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Nobody knows. because nobody knows when they're going to, when the farmers or their kids are going to sell the land. But the constituents here are concerned about the growth because they're going to have to, probably eminent domain people's houses to spread these roads. And so I think, the county commissioners need to look at that. I think the state needs to look at that and maybe have some legislation on these developers having to pay the impact fees and the cost of everything that comes, along with being a developer here, and not raising the taxes on the taxpayer, the property taxes, and things like that. That's another issue here in Napa and in my district. So I mean, and still be concerned about property rights, personal property rights. That's always an issue as well too. So we need to have some incentives in there, maybe for the property owners to not sell to the developers to slow the growth, because that's really what would happen. But I think we need to have people in these positions, like these precinct committeemen, here and make sure we are still putting true conservatives in the legislature, in the Senate, and hopefully get a true conservative governor at some point, to where and we can mitigate these losses as far as true conservatives.
Besides growth, what are some of the other things you've learned about your district as you've been going out there, knocking on doors, going to meet and greets, meeting people? What are the people's concerned about? What are some of the unique features of District 12 and Nampa that you've learned?
Mhm. Well, the table really the table issues too, is not only the growth. I mean, people are concerned about the schools, the overcrowding of the schools. I think we have three schools that's going to be shut down, and so they're concerned about the immigration, the legal immigration as well. We've talked about that. Medical, a lot of the doctors are leaving. I mean, so it's a plethora of issues out here in district that make it probably not unique, other than the growth, other than the closing of the schools, the crowding of the schools, and things like that. But really, people are still hurting from the Biden economy. The property taxes are going up, but wages aren't going up. The wages are being suppressed, and as far as medical costs are still rising. Some people can't uh, afford their medication, things like that. So, you know, I don't think there's anything specifically unique, but the growth and the property taxes were the two, have been the two biggest things, speaking to the constituents here in Napa that they're worried about.
So knowing that, then assuming you win the nomination and the general election, you're in the legislature next year. What kind of legislation will you look at to solve those issues, inflation and wages and excessive growth? What can you do?
I mean, well, the only thing we can do is sponsor bills. I definitely plan on sponsoring bills. I really want to abolish the property taxes. Is what I want to do. I'm truly a flat tax guy. If I could, I would abolish all income taxes on people's income. I would abolish property tax and go to a sales tax, a flat sales tax, because I think that we bring in enough money. Because the more money people have, the more money people will spend. And so with the sales tax, I think that would be more than enough to cover any of the expenses. As long as we don't overspend, we have to cut spending too. One of the things that we have to do as legislators is get off I would say the tit of the federal government. I think our budget in the state is like 40% it's like 40% coming from the federal government. We need to reduce that. We need to, stop our losses on that, and not keep accepting these government funds is going to keep us on the government, because if Washington fails, if the dollar fails, then Idaho is going to fail too. I also believe that we need state banks. We need our own state banks here, that can give low interest loans to the citizens here of Idaho, and maybe back it by gold or silver. I know my opponent voted against the bill that would have Idaho invest in gold and silver. I think that would be a great idea. I think Idaho needs to invest in gold and silver, and maybe even at some point, maybe have an Idaho dollar or something, or something like that, backed by gold and silver that the citizens can participate in. Because I think at some point, the federal government is $35 trillion in debt and growing, at a rapid pace. And I don't want to see Idaho become part of that and fail and fall because of the debt of the United States government. So I think we need to break away from that as much as possible. So those are going to be, some of the bills that I, want to sponsor. School choice. I'm a school choice guy. I don't really see, putting $100 million into a program and just handing a kid $8,000 that they have to turn over to the bureaucrats of Governor Little's friends because we have what is I think 215 um, bureaucratic classes or courses that they can take only, but that money is just being funneled right back. I believe it's sort of money laundering back into the bureaucrats' hands. I think if we're gonna give money out, that money, the taxpayers' dollars, should actually be able to follow the children and they can go to the school or trade schools of their choice. And I think that money would be better served that way since we pay taxes on it anyway.
Oh, it's an ambitious program there. I'm looking back at the last election. Your opponent, the incumbent, is a freshman legislator. He won a three-way race 2 years ago by only 74 votes.
Mhm.
So, 2,000 votes out there would have been enough to win that race. And so, in a two-way race, maybe 3,000. Have you found those voters out there?
Well, yeah, I think we have. I mean, I seem to have been well received at the forums that I've been to, at the meet and greets, at all these places that I've spoken at, that I've been invited to speak at. I've been to constituents' homes. They've held meet and greets for me, in the neighborhood. So, I think those votes are out there, and and I think about 3,000, 3,500 votes will win this seat, even if it's a presidential year, maybe a little more. But what I found is that the people here are actually educated. These voters are educated. When I go and knock on doors, and they're actually, and when I speak to the people knocking on doors, they're actually glad to see me because they say they don't see people that they don't see their candidates coming around knocking on the doors, and so they're happy to see me. So, and that's what I want to do. I really want to be in touch and in tune closely with the people, and I think I've gotten that from what I've heard and from what I've seen. At the venues that I've been to and the neighborhoods that I've been in. So Tuesday's going to be great. Tuesday's going to be, one of those nights where might be full of surprises or it may not be. But with these voters being very educated on who their representative is and what he has done and not done, and they are very aware of his voting record, and they don't seem to be too happy. And I think I might can pull it off.
I feel like we're in uncharted waters as far, politically speaking. It's the old models, the old patterns. It doesn't really tell us much about what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't believe so either. I think the day of having, I guess, the big consultants and things like that that just milk you for money and try to milk your constituents for money. I think those days are gone. I think we have to go back to really tapping in and to being, with the people. You have to go where they are at, especially in this economy. I mean, people don't have money to donate anymore. That $25 that I used to get, is going into gas tanks now. It's going on the food tables. So you really have to go out there and really hit the pavement and grind and talk to people, let the word of mouth carry you, So, that's what I've done. I haven't, asked for many donations. Yes, I've asked for donations and once you look at my reports, you'll see that I've run this campaign on minimal funds, minimal funds. I've run this campaign on, and so it's just going out there, meeting and talking to the people, and letting them know who I am, letting them know my policies, my platforms, and that hey, I'm going to vote your principles. I'm going to vote your values. I'm not going to sell your principles and values to the highest bidder. I'm not a big lobbyist guy. I think one of the things, other bills, you talk about bills, I'm actually going to sponsor a bill that lobbyists can't even come into the Capitol. We don't need lobbyists in the Capitol. If you want to meet with the lobbyists, then you go and meet where they are. They shouldn't come to the people's house, to try to persuade a lawmaker to vote a certain way in the people's house. So, that's, some things that I stand against.
It's an audacious idea, but I don't think keeping
So I
people
know it would
from
never happen,
going
but you know,
inside the
I'm a big
Capitol would work.
thinker. I'm a big thinker, but you
Yeah.
never know. You never know.
That's one of the things I noticed. I moved here with my family 6 years ago from Washington State, so the other side, the other coast from where you were. And one thing I really noticed right off the bat is that politics is accessible. I can just
Right.
walk in the Capitol, find a legislator in between committee meetings, and hey, let's talk. And you could talk to him. Even the governor, will sometimes be walking through, and you can try and get a word in. I haven't tried, but I really love that about Idaho politics. Just being able to talk to the representatives. They don't feel like they're in a different completely different world than the regular people.
Right. And not only that, they have, the citizen legislation here, where citizens can actually write
Hmm.
legislation and, and get it passed. And, I think that's a great idea because that was one of the, when I ran for Congress, that was one of the items that I had pledged that I would take to DC is for citizen legislation, because, it's really up to the people how they want to be governed. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to govern the people and it's really up to them. What do you want to see done? How do you want to be governed? Because we are their representatives, and I think that's a great idea that Idaho does as well.
That kind of leads into a question I've been mulling over the last couple of days. As we record this, there's a big controversy out there about a couple different outside groups that are spending a lot of money here.
Hmm.
Young Americans for Liberty put over $1 million into Idaho, and all sides do it. And it makes me think that state legislatures, people are realizing how important they are. And so you have national figures, Trump and Flynn and others who are weighing in on state legislature races. And I don't know. It seems like a double-edged sword because one, like you said, you're supposed to represent the people. You're supposed to represent the people of District 12, not, you know, some group out there in DC or Austin or wherever. But at the
Hmm.
same time, people are realizing how important state legislatures are. And if we're to save our country, then we're going to need to have conservative principles in those places. And so that's why people are spending all this money and time and influence weighing in. Um, I don't know. I don't really have a specific question there, but what are your thoughts on that as far as the national question and how it relates to local politics?
I mean, well, like you said, it's a big concern, with the outside money, floating in, and I think with the money you have to look at, okay, well, who's bringing the money in, and where is it going, and the principles. Like if any money comes in from me from outside forces or whatever, I would hope, because with PACs, I don't deal with PACs. A lot of times they just come in, and you don't even know it because we're not supposed to, you know, um, be buddy buddy with PACs or whatever. But I would hope that those PACs come in and they have the same values and principles as my constituents, as me, and and not that they want to see me vote a certain way because they already know how I'm going to vote. They already know my values. They already know my principles. Now, what you will see is these outside forces who don't want you to win, and they'll come in and put in negative money against you, and I guess, like I said, that's just a double-edged sword. So it really becomes up to the voters to be educated. And that's one thing I said I liked about my constituents here. They seem to be very, very educated, and they don't really pay attention to the outside voices or to the outside money that come in because they're locked in and tuned in on their candidate, and they know what their candidate stand for or does not stand for. So they don't really listen to the outside forces, as much. Like I said, I'm endorsed by General Flynn. General Flynn endorsed my campaign a couple weeks ago when he was here in Idaho. But everyone that follows me and everybody that follows General Flynn that understands who I am, understands who he is, understands that okay, that's a good endorsement for me. Now it's still ultimately up to me to make sure when I get into the seat and that I vote our principles and I continue to vote, our values, like I said I would, and vote the Constitution and vote the Idaho Constitution and vote God of all above all else. It's what I do. That's how I vote. God, Constitution of America, Constitution of Idaho, and the constituents. If it's against any laws that's against any of those things, then I've already told my constituents, and I'm a no vote. I'm a no vote on that. Because that's how I base my life on. That's how I base my how I would legislate on, and I think that's what my constituents want as well. And we'll see Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. All will be revealed come Tuesday. So shifting gears a little bit, I was wondering about, your life story. You spent 27 years in the Navy. Uh, what was that like? What are some of the things you learned in that, very long career, that made you the man you are today and you bring to the table as a political figure?
Well, I've been all over the world. I've been lucky enough to be on every continent and on the earth, and I've been in pretty much every major city or state around the world. And what I've found is that you know people around the world truly want the same thing. They want peace. They want happiness. They want the governments to leave them alone, you know, and and they really don't, and okay, now I'm not talking about the radicals and things like that. You already have your radicals. We're talking about the ordinary people, you know, because a lot of people believe that foreigners that they hate Americans, and they really don't. They really don't. We actually sit down with them. We actually want the same things. But I still know that the United States of America is the best country in the world. And I can say that because I've been to all of them. I've been to 99% of them, and I know what the people go through, and they love America. They love the freedoms that we have here in America. And this is why our country is unfortunately being invaded, by some of these people because they want to come here and they want some of the freedoms. Some just want the handouts, and that's one thing. I do not believe in illegal invasion. I believe that we need to stop that at all costs. If people want to come in this country, they need to come in this country legally and do it the right way. And with the career in the Navy, I've worked with all types of people. I, talk about diversity, right? Talk about from 1985 Navy to 2012 Navy when I retired. It had changed a lot. You learn to deal with the changes. You learn to deal with the different people. The different cultures that that they bring, but you actually learn to work together. You have to learn to be a cohesive unit. You actually, have to make sure that the machine still runs. Whether you might disagree or agree, with people that you work with, and I think that's what I can bring to the legislature of Idaho is that I've worked with all type of people. I know how to negotiate. I retired off of an admiral staff, so I know how high level um, negotiations work. I know, we may have to bend a little bit, we may have to compromise a little bit to get everything that we want, but you don't have to stoop down and you don't have to bend the knee, as long as you stand firm on your principles and your beliefs. And if everyone is on that same plane of serving the people the correct way, then things usually work out. But I think I bring that to the table more than anything, being able to work with different types of people and all types of people.
Yeah, I think it is a slightly different environment. I've talked to a lot of veterans who are in the legislature or politically involved, and one of the
Mhm.
big changes is that, there's not the chain of command. In the military, you obey your superior officer, you give orders to your junior officers, and you know, obviously outside of anything grossly unconstitutional, you're just supposed to do it. Whereas here, I think some people get the idea, and not necessarily even veterans, just people get the idea that legislators work for the governor, that the governor sets the agenda and the legislators carry it out. Which obviously I don't think you'd agree with that. So
No,
how
no.
how do you manage the relationship between the governor and the executive staff and fellow legislators, and then of course the people?
I mean, well, you flip it upside down. We work for the people. The people is our commanding officer. when you look at the legislature, because that's who we work for, that's who put us in office, that's who pay us. So you so you flip it because we work for the people, and we take our direction from the people, how they want to be legislated, how what laws they would like to see passed, and we take those, yeah, to the governor because we make the laws and the governor has to sign them. So to me, you just flip that around, flip that upside down, and the governor is just the signer. Yes, he can veto just like the commanding officer. Yes, he can disagree. But like I was a chief petty officer in the Navy, and everyone will tell you that chiefs run the Navy. Okay, we run the Navy, and we run the Navy because what they call we're on the deck plates. We listen to our junior troops, and we take their voices up to the commanding officer. And that's basically the same thing. We're on the deck plates. The legislatures are chief petty officers. We're the deck plates that listen to our junior people, which are our constituents, and we take their concerns and we take what they want up to the commanding officer, which is the governor, by laws and by writing good laws and legislation up to the governor for him to sign for our junior troops to make sure our junior troops or our constituents are happy.
It's funny you mentioned that. My dad served in the Navy from 79 to 99, and he also retired as a chief petty officer.
Okay, very
So
cool. He's a brother. He's a
yeah,
brother, a fraternity brother,
I
biggest
don't
fraternity in the world.
I don't know. Maybe you cross paths at some point. That would be a fun story. Um, you mentioned one thing you mentioned a while back at the beginning of this conversation was open primaries and how that doomed your campaign over in Virginia. Here in Idaho, we're kind of facing the same issues. The Republican Party actually sued to close the primary 10 or 12 years ago. And they were successful because, as a private organization, the party can decide who gets to take part.
Right.
But now you have this ballot initiative that's trying to just completely obliterate the entire concept of the primary, make it a jungle primary, no party affiliation at all, and then a ranked choice vote for the general. What are your thoughts on that? I assume you oppose it. Um, but what are your thoughts on what that could do to Idaho, and what can we do to stop it from happening?
Well, just point blank, it would destroy Idaho. I saw, like I said, I saw this in Virginia 10 years ago. And once, see, because what it is, this is a battleground. With ranked choice voting and open primaries, it's what they call jungle primaries. It's a battleground that the Democrats know how to play oh too well. Because if we ever have open primaries here in Idaho, kiss Idaho goodbye. They're never the last red state out west will turn blue, and and it's because of rhinos like my opponent that sits in the legislature that will vote Democrat or moderate, as they call it. And what will happen is, and you'll see it, is that and the establishment Republicans are good for because they would rather have a rhino or a Democrat in that seat than a true conservative or a shepherd of the people. You can see that in any state. And what will happen is the establishment will, I can say against me. Let's just say this, right? I'm running. I'm the true conservative. I'm the America First conservative, and I'm the number one candidate. Well, the establishment will make sure, and you saw this, I guess, in Jeff's in my opponent's last race, three-way race, how he won. They run two horses. They will run two horses against the conservative. They'll run one moderate, and they'll run one other horse that will basically duplicate or mirror the conservatives' campaign with a nicer tone or with a gentler touch type of deal, right? To pull votes away from the conservative so that the rhino will win. Whereas, and also with open primaries, the Democrats will come over and they will vote for the least likely person to beat their Democrat challenger. And then you'll start seeing Democrats come into these districts to run for seats, and they will only run one. They will only run one. They will hardly run two people to have a primary, especially if it's their top Democrat candidate. And so they will come over, and if they have the votes, and if they know they have the moderates, they have the Democrats that can beat the weakest Republican candidate, they will come over in our primary and they will help the rhino or the weakest candidate win that race over the true conservative of the people. and then they have what they want. Either they have a moderate conservative or a Democrat. So either way, they win. And you see, that's pretty much what's happening in the Idaho legislature now with the way that a lot of these Republicans are voting Democrat, and they're philosophically Democrats. And it will be the end of Idaho as far as being a red state. And you know what happens when states turn blue? They turn into shitholes.
So how do we stop that? How do we convince voters that this is actually a bad idea?
Look at these blue states. I mean, we really have to get out the voices. Do you want Idaho to be California? Do you want Idaho to become Colorado? Do you want Idaho to become Illinois or Chicago? I mean, we really have to get, I mean, and really, you know, be firm about it. I mean, if you want that, then that's what open primaries and ranked choice voting is going to do. But we have to get out that message strong. Every conservative, true conservative Republican or true conservative in this state, these people have to participate in the process, and we really have to get out the vote how important primaries are in this state as well. Primaries are very important because a lot of times we run unopposed. Like in my race, whoever wins Tuesday goes to the state house, and that's what the people are going to have in November. And so people have to be informed. We have to make people knowledgeable, whether it's town halls, whether it's information meetings. I know we do it at the central committee meetings, but really have to get more involvement. And and I mean we have to commercials, whatever we need to do, print ads, but people need to know, mailers. I mean, we need to do stuff like this, not only during election time, not only during election season, but on a constant basis, to keep people involved, to keep let people know, what these things will do to the states, because what they do is they go and they lie to elderly people. Like I had a woman come up to a person that I know, and blatantly lie, and tell them, oh well, this is so the elections, if you sign this is so the elections will be fair, and everybody can vote. Well, that's not actually what you're trying to do, so why lie? So we have to, get out in front of it, and we have to, like I said, I come from the belly of the beast, so we have to fight like we're in the belly of the beast, and we have to fight. It's a blood sport. Now, Democrats understand that this election thing, and winning and being able to, write laws, for these states, it's a blood sport, and once a lot of people actually understand that and understand that we are in the middle of a communist revolution here in the United States. And they're going state by state. You got, the George Soros is putting all the money in, like you said, the young YL, Young American Leadership, or whatever, putting in $1 million, to try to turn states blue. This is communism. It's not just being a Democrat. This is a Democrat communism. This is trying to take over the United States, and people need to realize that. We need to get that message out, Brian.
Oh, to clarify, YAL is conservative, or they're conservative libertarian, but that just underscores the point that you've got Soros money, you've got other left-wing organizations they're dumping money in, so right-wing organizations are fighting as well. I feel like the Democrats understand, like you're saying, they understand that it's a blood sport. They understand the nature of politics, that nothing matters if you don't win, so they will
Right.
do anything to win. Whereas on the right, I think all too often we think it's just a debate club where we just go out there, we present our ideas, and if the people don't like it, well, then that's okay. We come back next time. Well, eventually there's not going to be a next time.
It's not going to be next time, right? And it's going to happen quick. It's not going to be something that's going to take 10, 15 years, because they're already here. They are already attacking, and I see it clearly because it happened in Virginia. And so people need to listen to people. I know some people don't like, I guess, when people like myself come over and run for office. But like I said, I never really planned to run for office. And that's not a native Idahoan. Well, a lot of the native Idahoans, unfortunately, are blind to the fact of what's happening because they're so content, they're so comfortable, with their lifestyle, and they don't even know what's about to take place here in Idaho. I mean, because you have a refugee resettlement program going on here in Idaho. It's really, really big up north. I got some friends up there, and they say, "Man, this is bad. What's going on up here is bad, and it's going to trickle down, and all of these people are not conservatives, and so really need to educate the people. We need to get with the youth, because this is where they're going. They are attacking, if you want to say attacking, or they're going after the youth early. And this is what we need to do. We need to, make sure that with these school boards and the Department of Education, we need to bring civics back, to these classrooms. We need to, teach these kids what it is like to be a true American and to love this country. And if we do that, then I think we can stave off this communist attack in our education system. And so it's all about education, educating the parents, educating the young youth, and getting people to love America, getting people to love this great state of Idaho, and not let it turn into, something like California.
Yeah, and then maybe in another generation or two, we can talk about taking back California. You
Yeah,
notice that the states only ever turn blue. They, at least in the last 20, 30 years, they don't turn red.
they never turn back red, right? And that's unfortunate. And because of ideologies, and that's one of the things that we need to focus on too. Brian, you mentioned a good point, and that's getting these blue states back to red. How do we do that? How can we go in and battle? And it's going to come from tough Republican leadership, not this weak Republican leadership. We have weak Republicans. What's going on in D.C.? You see it. What's going on, here? You see we have weak leadership, that want to, um, keep their friends and things like that. You can't have friends in politics, unfortunately, sometimes, And I mean, but you have to do the right thing, for the majority of the people, and what they want, and preserving the constitutional republic of this country. And that goes state by state, and like I said, the Democrats understand this, and that's why they go state by state by state. And so it's going to take some tough Republicans that can fight in a blood sport. Like myself. Like I said, I've come from the belly of the beast. I know how to fight them. I know how to combat them. I know what it'd take to win as well. But it's going to ultimately take the people to be educated and willing to fight as well. Willing to fight side by side. You're not worried about being called a racist or being called a homophobe, xenophobe, bigot, white supremacist, or whatever. We need to be Americans, and we need to learn. If we want to keep it like this, we need to be able to fight side by side.
Well, I've appreciated your time today. If there's any issues that we haven't covered that you'd like to make sure to cover, or if you just have closing thoughts, now's the time.
I mean, I just want to keep Idaho red. I mean, if you want to keep Idaho red, I'm running for District 12, Seat A, against an opponent that's anything, but a conservative. Look at his voting record. I mean, and May 21st. May 21st is very, very important for the state of Idaho. If you want to keep Idaho red, we have some great conservatives running. If you don't know who to vote for, then get with your precinct committeemen, get with people in your neighborhood, go on some of these different conservative websites and learn who to vote for, and vote America First candidates, vote true conservative candidates, and make sure you ask them questions and that they're going to support you and vote your principles and values. And May 21st, vote for Jarome Bell, District 12A, Nampa.
Jarome Bell, candidate for State House of Representatives in District 12, Seat A. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you for having me.